DreamWorks has just released a trailer for the upcoming Shira reboot that's going to be on Netflix on November 16, 2018. Now, so far, this show has generated a lot of controversy, with a lot of people feeling that this show is going to ruin the spirit of the original show. The critics are saying that the new show is just going to be pushing some sort of toxic SJW agenda. Now, I'll explain in detail what I mean by that a little later. So the question is, based on this new trailer, does this show stick to the spirit of the original 1980s franchise and the original show made in the 1980s? Or is it just going to be some sort of terrible pro-SJW agenda thing? Based on this new trailer, I gotta say the show actually looks like it's going to be pretty good. It does look like it is staying within the spirit of the original show. Now, some changes have been made, and the thing is, whenever you have a reboot, changes are made. The real question is, are the changes going to be contrary to the spirit of the original show, or are they going to be in harmony with the spirit of the original show? And from what I've seen in this trailer, everything seems to be in harmony with the spirit of the original show. Also, I have to say that I did not see any red flags in this trailer that indicate that this show is going to be some sort of toxic SJW propaganda show. This is what Hordak looks like from the new trailer. To me, there's nothing wrong with this design. On his shoulder is Imp. Now, Hordak is the primary antagonist in the original show, and probably will be in this show as well. Hordak is the leader of the evil horde on the planet that Shira lives on. Now, when I say that I hope this show does not become a toxic SJW thing, what I mean specifically is I hope this show doesn't have a lot of toxic feminism, because interestingly, the original show, although it could have been very toxically feminist, was not. Now, when it comes to feminism, I have nothing wrong with the idea that men and women should be equal, and some feminism is actually about that. But there's also certain types of feminism that's more about misandry and promoting stereotypes of men that are inaccurate, and also promoting the idea that men are always victimizing women, that are actually rather toxic and are harmful to both men and women. Now, in the case of this show, if they make Hordak somehow representing the patriarchy, that would be a huge mistake. Because the truth is, even though some people will tell you that in the original show, Hordak represented the patriarchy and represented oppressive men, this is not really true at all. It's true that Hordak was oppressive, but he was oppressive towards everybody, whether they were male or female, and he was not particularly oppressive towards females. He oppressed everybody equally. He pretty much didn't like anybody except for maybe Imp, and that's because Imp is very much a sycophant. Another thing about Hordak is he does put a lot of women in high-ranking positions in the Horde. Now, that's not because Hordak really cares about advancing the cause of women or anything like that. It's just because if Hordak knows that a female can actually help him and is actually worthy and would actually be the best person for a particular job, he will put women in a high-ranking position. He's not dumb enough to underestimate women. He also never underestimates Shira's abilities because she is female. In fact, if he did do something like that, it would make me respect Shira less, because that would give Hordak a weakness that he actually doesn't have. If he was dumb enough to underestimate Shira because she was female, it would make her victories over him seem less impressive, because it would mean that she would have the advantage of him constantly underestimating her for that reason. The original show could have gone in the toxic feminist direction, although some people seem to think that toxic feminism has only been around for like 5 or 10 years. That's not really true. Toxic feminism was definitely around and in full force in the 1980s when the original show came out, but the show actually managed to avoid becoming toxically feminist, but it was still very, very much a very strong girl power show. And it always will be a very strong girl power franchise. If you don't like girl power shows at all, then you're not going to like this new show, but you also wouldn't like the original either. What was great about the original show was it did show that you could have a girl power show with very empowered female characters without being a toxic feminist show. Now, I want to say that not all forms of feminism are toxic feminism. Just certain forms of feminism are. And toxic feminism is actually disempowering. Frankly, I think that it's much more powerful for there to be a girl power show that is not a toxic feminist show. Now, I want to say that all I have seen so far is a trailer, and trailers are sometimes misleading. There was actually a trailer that came out before this one, but that was just a teaser trailer, and it really wasn't possible to draw any conclusions from that trailer. It is possible to draw some conclusions from the new trailer. However, it still is a trailer, and sometimes trailers can be misleading. Now, one interesting difference in this trailer from the original show is this, and this is not anything anyone else has talked about. Shira in this show is actually a little bit less confident than she was in the original. For example, she expresses how she initially felt a little bit awkward when she first transformed into Shira and was wearing a tiara.
All I did was pick up the sword and then, whoosh, I'm in a tiara!
That is the kind of thing that the original Shira would not have said, because the original Shira would have never felt awkward in a tiara when she first became Shira, not even for a minute. The original Shira was portrayed as having this almost inhuman level of self-confidence. She was very confident as Shira, and she was also very confident as Adora. Just like many other superheroes, Shira is actually the alter ego of Adora. It was almost implied in the original show that she never lacked self-confidence or experienced fear for even a minute since the time she was born. Now, I understand why they might have wanted to change this in the new show. Maybe they wanted to make her a little bit more human, since nobody has not felt awkward, at least at some point in their life. And I'm not saying that I dislike the change, but I'm also not saying that I dislike the way they did in the original either. In fact, I think it was actually kind of interesting to see her being this sort of inhumanly self-confident person who was actually more confident than He-Man was. And it's not that He-Man was a character that lacked confidence, it's just that even He-Man was not nearly as confident as Shira. But I think that this new way of doing it, by making her a little bit more human, also looks pretty interesting to me. Either way, I don't think this is a change that would ruin the show or the franchise. This is what Katra looks like from the new show. Now, a lot of people have criticized the new look of Katra, saying that she looks a little bit too much like a anime cat girl, but Katra was always a cat girl. In the original, she would often meow and sometimes purr when she talked. It doesn't look like she does that in this version. To me, at least originally, Catra always personified cattiness. She was a very catty and sort of jealous character. I don't know if they're going to make her out to be like that in the new one. We can tell, and a lot of people have talked about this, that in the new one, they show that Adora, back when she was part of the evil horde and thought that the evil horde was good, was friends with Catra. Now, Catra is a villain, and originally, she was actually the primary antagonist of Shira. That was before the Filmation cartoon was made. Mattel created Shira originally, and in certain books, Catra was portrayed as her primary antagonist. Filmation decided to make Hordak the primary antagonist for Shira, but Catra was still an important member of the evil horde and was the force captain who replaced Adora. In the original origin story from the Filmation show, Shira, as Adora, was kidnapped as a baby by Hordak. The reason why Hordak kidnapped her was because he knew that she was destined for greatness, and he wanted to use her talents and abilities in the evil horde. So he raised her to believe that the evil horde was not evil, and Shadow Weaver, who was also part of the evil horde, would cast spells on her, making her think that the evil horde was not evil. Eventually, He-Man came and brought her her sword and encouraged her to go out and see what the evil horde is actually doing to people. And she was eventually convinced that, the evil horde was evil, and she joined the side of the rebellion. Now, it looks like from the trailer, they really haven't changed much of the origin story. She still is originally a member of the evil horde and is convinced to join the rebellion afterwards. From the trailer, it doesn't look like He-Man is involved, or if he is involved, we haven't seen him yet. Now, I will say that just based on this trailer, it does look pretty good. It does look like it's staying close enough to the original that I think that it's not going to mess up the franchise. Like I said, the one way to really screw this up would be to involve toxic feminism, and frankly, I haven't seen any red flags that it's going to be a toxic feminist show. I think that, like I said in my previous videos on Shira, I've made 2 others, I'll link them in the description. The people who were criticizing this were probably jumping the gun because they were basing most of their opinions just on one frame of the show, and there's really no way to tell if this show is going to have a toxic political agenda just from one frame. Now, that stated, it's also true that I have only really seen this trailer and the teaser trailer, and sometimes trailers could be misleading. It could still end up being a toxic feminist show. But from what I've seen so far, it's not going to be like that, and I am optimistic that this show will actually be a pretty good show. A lot of people have also criticized the animation style of this new show for being overly abstract and cartoonish. And it is true that this show uses more abstract and cartoonish animation than the original show did. But that seems to be the trend in animation these days. And it is also true that in the 1980s, when the original show was made, the pendulum was pretty much in the opposite direction. In the 1980s, animation had a tendency to be very realistic, at least for animation. Proportions for humans were very realistic. Proportions for other objects were very realistic. Starting in the 90s, animation started to become more abstract and cartoonish, and certainly in the past several years, pretty much all of the animation shows that I know of that have come out have been a lot more abstract and cartoonish. Maybe there are some exceptions. Off the top of my head, I can't think of any that use the kind of realistic proportions that 80s cartoons like the original Shira used. But if you know of any, let me know in the comments. Like I said in the very first video I made on Shira, I'm excited that they're even rebooting this franchise at all, because frankly, I wasn't sure if there was ever going to be another Shira cartoon again, and I think it's a good thing that they're actually making one, and I think it might be a little bit too much to ask to assume that they would have the same sort of realistic looking animation style that the original cartoon did have. As long as they don't really screw this cartoon up by making it toxically feminist or trying to make Hordak the symbol of the patriarchy, then I am fine with a show making some changes. And at the very least, we can say that the cartoon style of this show is not as overly cartoonish as Thundercats Roar. I think that that show probably did go a little bit too far in its animation style, and this show isn't going that far in that direction. But like I said, since it is a modern show, I did expect the characters to look more cartoonish and abstract than the characters did in the 1980s show. That's just the trend in modern animation. I also want to add that some of the people who have been defending this new show have done so by attacking the original show. And I'm not going to get too involved in that in this video. I'm just going to say that most of the attacks on the original show and its animation are not very accurate, and it's not really necessary to attack the original show in order to defend this one. So if you like this video, go ahead and give it a like, and if you haven't already, subscribe to my channel, click the bell icon for notifications, join the Zork army, and together we shall take over the world. I upload 5 videos a month. You can also catch me on Twitter, Instagram, and Snapchat at ZorkMid123.